Hello class. I am going to start off this video today with a review of the basic shapes. By now, if you have been following our checklist on iCollege, you will have already watched the videos on contour and cross contour. And those really also, I want to talk about that in context of the basic shapes. Okay, so the basic shapes we have are sphere, which we talked about briefly. I want you to, actually before I get into it, I want you to, if you don't have this with you already, get your vine charcoal, a piece of large scrap paper. Hopefully you've gotten the newsprint. If not, I totally understand. Just get some kind of scratch paper that you could do a warm-up with. And use your vine charcoal if you can. And what I like to do when I start drawing, or just before, is to kind of warm up and loosen up. Remember that we're not holding our charcoal like a pencil. We're holding it, when we're doing these shapes, I'm going to hold it like this. Okay, so holding it like this is going to allow me to use my whole shoulder to create this circle. And what I'm doing is I'm ghosting here. Ghosting means I'm not pressing very hard. I'm getting a bunch of lines, and I'm just doing this until I see that I'm starting to get something that looks like a nice round circle. You know, as I see that it's where it needs to be corrected, then I can correct it. And also my angle, my drawing board is at a bit of an angle, so there might be a little bit of distortion. Let me see if I can try to minimize that. Probably not a good idea to adjust this during the live stream. But anyway, so there might be a little bit of distortion. On my paper it looks pretty round. And so the sphere. So here we have a circle. To make it a sphere, we talked about how a curved surface gets a curved line. If I were to just do straight lines across this sphere, then it looks flat, right? It looks like a manhole cover or a penny or something like that, because the contour lines that I put across it are straight, and straight lines indicate that it's a flat or straight surface. So if I really want to make this circle look like a sphere, I have to imitate that curved surface that it has, and I need to put some curved lines on it. So I'm going to curve around like this. You know, with this vine charcoal, you're not married to the first line you make, so just loosen up. And I'm going to put lines this way, lines this way, to indicate that this is spherical. Alright, so this is kind of cross-contour drawing that would indicate to someone that this is a spherical surface. Alright, so that's the sphere. Another basic shape is the ellipse, which we'll be using a lot. So let me go over an ellipse. This is the teacup that we will be drawing today. And what I want to talk about, ellipses are basically, they're circles. I'm trying to get used to this camera. So if you're looking, if your eye is directly up here where my camera is, and you're looking down on this cup, what you're seeing is a circle, right? So that's this. But as the angle of either your eye or the cup changes, and you're starting to see that circle from the side, you start to get an ellipse. Do you see that ellipse starting to form? And as it goes this way slowly, the ellipse gets narrower and narrower until eventually it's just going to become more or less a line. Okay, so if I tip it back this way again, that ellipse is going to start to open up. And it's going to open up until I get that perfect circle again. Okay, ellipses are tricky. So ellipses are something you're really going to need to practice. So let me show you an example of a practice page that I did. This is an example of me starting a page of ellipses and just kind of loosening up my arm, trying to get the ellipses looking right with that ghosting method. And then after I had a bunch of ellipses, I started to just turn them into cylinders. Okay, so a cylinder has, when you look at it from the side, it's got an ellipse on the top. And technically the bottom is also an ellipse, but if it's a solid cylinder, you're just not seeing that. So to do a practice page like this, you just have to think about cylinders, ellipses in this way. Ellipses really have 4 points, right? So you have a point here, a point here. You can make an axis. And they should be equidistant, right? I probably am not, just by freehanding it, but so it should be equal. You can use your measuring stick to make sure you have 4 points. So they should all be equidistant. Ellipses do not have points on the end. I see a lot of students drawing ellipses like this. That is not an ellipse, okay? An ellipse is just like we saw with that cup. So if you want to review, rewind and look at that cup experiment again, or get your own cup, you would know here that the ellipses do not have pointy edges. They don't look like footballs, right? So what you do is you kind of imagine that you are going around these 4 points. And we'll use that ghosting method. So I'm not going to use this crossbar every time I want to draw an ellipse, but I might in a drawing when, especially if I'm having problems visualizing how large an ellipse is. If I do a specific measurement, I might say, okay, well, the way I'm measuring it, it's twice as long as it is tall. You know, I might give myself something to go by. But for practice on your ellipses, just practice loosening up, holding your charcoal overhand, and just try ghosting like this. Just try it over and over and over again. One thing that's really hard for students to do, I think, is to try to relax when you're drawing, and that's also perfectly understandable. Drawing can be intimidating, but what we want to do is we want to loosen up, and we want to just know that by using this vine charcoal and by using this ghosting method, we aren't tied to that first mark we make. If I try to make an ellipse the first time, it's going to look like that. And that's not right, right? So what you're going to do is you're just going to keep going, and you're going to make a bunch of lines. And it's like over time, it kind of appears, and you can see it, right? So for this, you can kind of make corrections as you're looking at it lightly. Like this end is too narrow. All right, so just keep practicing. And if you want to practice your cylinders, all you got to do is put parallel lines that connect to the edge, and ellipse, the curve at the bottom will be roughly similar to the curve at the ellipse here. Or if you want more practice, you can just practice drawing an ellipse in here, and then erase this part. And that gets you your cylinder. One common problem I see with students drawing cylinders is this, and then also maybe the lines aren't quite parallel, and then when you get to the bottom, students want to just do this if it's sitting on a hard surface. But what rule does that disobey? A curved line gets a curved surface gets a curved line, right? So here's your curved line. So you've got to correct that, and you've got to try to practice your parallel lines. So if I wanted to fix this, I could just, keep doing this until I get it basically right. Okay, and what we do in this class, we start off with the divine charcoal, we get everything how we want it with this kind of loose, sketchy way of drawing. And then when you want to make it permanent on your paper, you just take your charcoal pencil, and then you can make a line that's a little bit more permanent once you have a guide to follow that you struggled over, but that is right. And this this doesn't come off as easily. All right, so this is cylinder. So what you want to do is when you're looking at cylinders like the cup, we're going to be drawing a bottle today. That's a cylinder, right? So it's based off of this kind of drawing that we have here. And we're also going to draw a teacup. Teacup also has this cylindrical opening. And we're not going to get really exact with it today. I'm just trying to get you to do the outline and pay attention to proportions and angles, and just to try to get the bones of the drawing correct before you go in and add shading and the glint of the light on the edge and all this stuff. We're not worried about that stuff in this module. That's module 2 that we'll be doing value. But what I want you to do, once you get your paper and your supplies together, I want you to practice using this 18 by 24 paper. I want you to get practice, especially on these ellipses. Just fill up pages with ellipses. Then start turning those ellipses into, see, I'm doing the overhand method again, turning them into cylinders. This is just practice. You want to loosen up. You want to just do as many as you can. Let them overlap each other. Loosen up. So let's practice these cylinders. Practice your spheres. All right, spheres, same way. Just practice trying to get that nice round. And then the ones that are wrong, you can just come in and get rid of them. All right, so we got circles, we have spheres. Now we have cubes. So cubes, this paper is getting up to look a little bit hectic here. I'll go ahead and just fold over an edge for my cube. All right, so cubes, students tend to have a little bit more trouble with. Actually, I'm going to flip the whole page. Cubes, just think about what a cube looks like. A cube has parallel lines, right? It's just, it's squares on each side, right? So just depends on what position the cube is in that you're looking at. We'll also talk later about how to draw a cube with perspective. But for now, I want you to try to draw it just by looking at a cube. So the cube, I usually, if there's a corner of the cube facing me, I usually draw that corner first. Let's say the corner is directly facing me. I'm not really tied to, remember, we're keeping in mind our sketchy idea that we aren't married to the first thing we do, and that it doesn't have to be exact. It's not a real painful exact line like we were doing in blind contour. It's more of the sketchy thing. Decide how much of the side you're seeing. Okay, you can just put it that way. You can just draw a parallel line. Then what you can do is you can take your measuring stick and put it up and turn the stick counterclockwise or clockwise until let's say you're looking at a cube or a box, until you get the angle, this bottom angle, like what's the angle that it is going away from you. And let's say you get that angle, you measure it, you put it down without moving your wrist. All right, and that is the bottom edge of the cube. And these are parallel, so these are going to be roughly parallel. So I'm going to do that. All right, and then there's another. It's probably facing away from me. I can get the edge of the cube if I'm looking at something real, my box, and turn and lay it down. Now this line should be parallel with this one. This line here should be parallel with that one. Alright, so I'm just kind of creating this cube. The top part is where it gets a little tricky because sometimes these lines are hard to envision how to make it parallel. And then this line would be parallel with this one. So really what we're drawing is, we're drawing planes. Right? A cube is just an accumulation of planes. So I would practice that. I would practice getting a box. This one, these I can tell when I look up at the camera, I can see that they're converging slightly. On my paper, because I'm close to it, it's harder to see that. But what you can do is when you're drawing, and when we're drawing in the classroom, it's very important to put your paper or your drawing up on the other side of the room from where you are, and back all the way up to the other side of the room and look at it from a distance. And then some of these proportion mistakes will come into focus very quickly. It's the same thing for me here, because when I look up at my camera, the cube is really small on my computer screen. So practice your cubes, and we're gonna sight and measure a cube later on. So cubes, cylinders, spheres. A cone is really just a cone shape has an ellipse on the bottom, and it just comes into a cone this way. So that's another basic shape would be cone. So, you know, things are, and a cone is kind of shaded like a cylinder, except for, you know, that the light kind of becomes a little bit triangular right here where the highlight is a little bit triangular. All right, so that's just a warm-up. That's a review of your basic shapes. If we were to do cross-contour drawings on the basic shapes, let me show you something we want to remember. A curved surface gets a curved line, and a change in plane gets a change in line direction. So if we have lines going across this cube, well, they look better. Also, here's another helpful hint. They look better if they're also parallel. So if we have lines coming across here, when I get a change in plane, this line is going to follow this plane. And then that's going to keep the illusion going that this thing is three-dimensional, even though it's not. We can put our lines this way if we want on top. And here's an example on this cylinder. So I'm going to put, let's say this cylinder has lines on it going this way. What happens if I forget my rule about when there's a change in plane, there's a change in line direction? What if I just say, okay, well, I'm going to do my lines on the top here. What happened to my sphere? It flattened out, right? Now it looks hollow, maybe like it's a cage or something like that, but I was trying to draw a solid sphere. And because I forgot to change my line direction, it's messed with my illusion. My illusion, I want to say that this is one plane, one curved plane, and this is a flat plane on top of that. So this is going to get these lines with a change of line direction. Okay, it doesn't really matter if they went that way or that way. Either way, it's flattened it out that top surface, and it's separated the two planes. And again, this is the curved surface, so this would be getting the curved lines. All right, so that's your basic shapes review. And let's see if this works. I have a learning curve here, but I'm going to try to put in an apple. Hey, I did it! Alright, so there's an example of a student work cross-contour drawing. Actually, let me just take this off. So notice that this student did a really good job. She was looking at the apple from the top, and she was imagining her line going across all the different curves of that surface. This is really an excellent drawing. So you can see where the lines just go out of your vision is where they hit the edge of your contour, your outer contour drawing. So, for example, when these go over and they hit the edge of that contour line, and that just means they're out of your vision at that point. Alright, so that is, hopefully you guys are understanding those two rules on contour. And you should have by now done in your notebook your cross-contour fruits and vegetables. If not, go back and visit that before you start this. Alright, so what we're doing today, we're talking about sighting and measuring. You should have also watched the videos on sighting and measuring that were hyperlinked in your checklist. What I usually do in the first day of class is I have students draw a bottle twice. Okay, I don't know if that's going to work in this field of view, but I'm going to show you real quick. I have them take their paper and put a line down the center. Just divide it in half. Okay, and I have them draw this bottle. And what we do is on one side, I'm going to start on this side here, we just do a contour drawing of the bottle. We don't sight and measure it or anything. We just look at the bottle and we draw it. Okay, so that would be something like this. So if you have a bottle there that you're going to draw, yours is going to look different. Let's say I want to draw this bottle. I'm just going to freehand it. Okay. And I'm looking at the bottle. Actually, I have it over here. So this would be my basic wine bottle without getting into that cool skull label for now, because that would take me too long. I look at it, I look at the bottle, I look at my drawing, I look back at the bottle, I'm wondering if it looks accurate. I think I'm going to bring the neck up a little bit. Alright, so that's my contour drawing. So now what I want to do is on this other side, I'm going to talk about sighting and measuring using this bamboo skewer that came in your kit. Alright, so what you do when you sight and measure, you use this stick to measure objects from closing one eye, and you put this, you hold it like this, and you close one eye like this. Put your thumb so that your thumb can move up and down. What I'm doing is I'm lining up the top end of the stick with the top of the bottle here. Okay? And then I want to know how, I'm going to use this, the smaller measurement of the neck of the bottle. I'm just curious how many necks of the bottle fit into the height of the bottle. And why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this because we are concerned with proportions, right? If we want to be able to draw something and have it have the right proportions of length to width, we can measure using this stick, and we can tell ourselves something like, well, one of these bottle necks, if I stacked up 3 bottlenecks or 4 bottlenecks, it would be just as tall as this bottle. And then if I took that bottleneck and I turned it sideways, it's the same as the width of the bottle. And if I know that information, then I can draw the bottle quickly at any size and retain accurate proportions. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do with your measuring stick is to take your bottle and put it in front of you. It could be any kind of bottle, and find a small measurement that you think would fit in to the overall, a measurement for you that's easy to replicate, that might help you decide how tall something is or how wide something is. For me in this case, I'm using the length of the bottle. I'm going to measure with my stick from here to here. All right, and that is going to be the measurement that I take. So I'm going to hold up my shoulder. I'm going to close one eye. I'm going to align the top of my stick with the very topmost part of the bottle. Then I'm going to move my thumb until it comes down to this point. So you can visualize it. I'm measuring from the back side of that ellipse to where the bottle joins that. That's what I'm measuring. So I've got that measured. Now I want to know how tall is the bottle relative to the neck. So I'm going to take that measurement. I'm going to keep my thumb right where it is. I'm going to move my stick down, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, and I move it down there, and I see that that measurement comes the second time I use it, it comes to the top of the label, right about there. Then I move it down again. Then it comes down to about the chin of the skull. And then I move it down again, and it comes down a little bit to about right here. So my bottle is about 4 necks high. So again, I had this measurement. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4. So hey, I wasn't so bad on drawing that freehand. But to be fair, I've been drawing this wine bottle and drawing one for quite a long time. So it's getting there. All right, so we have basically a 1:4 ratio. I don't want to, scare you off with math, but basically what that is saying is that you could stack up 4 of these bottlenecks and get the height of the bottle. So what if I take my measurement again? I'm going to measure the bottleneck again since I lost my measurement just then. What if I turn it sideways? How is it compared to the width of the bottle? This neck, and all bottles are going to be different. This neck on this bottle is almost 1, but it's a little bit longer. So that this bottleneck measurement came out here a little bit. So it's almost 1 neck wide, but the bottleneck was a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do, now that I have my information, I know that I want to draw a bottle that is straight, that has good proportions. So I'm going to first decide how big do I want this bottle on my page. Right, the bottle's across the room. I could draw it at any size. But in this exercise, it really helps, I think, for you to please draw a large bottle. So I'm just going to say, okay, I want my bottle to end here and here. And I know that one bottleneck fits in 4 times. So if this is the bottle height, then I need to divide this into fourths. Right? So if I divide it in half, I get that. And I'm just eyeballing this. That could be wrong. So I can take my stick. It has many purposes. And I can say, well, did I get that? Is my halfway mark, is it right? I'm going to put my finger here and here. No, it's not right. So I'm going to try it again. It was a little bit off. So if I put it down here, now is that right? So I'm going to measure it, and then I'm going to compare it. And that's much closer. Okay, so this is the halfway point. Now if I divide this in half again, then that should be 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, right? 1, 2, well, that's again not really correct. So I want to, what I can do as soon as I get one of these fourths correct, then I can use it for the whole, I should be able to use it for the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so here, here, here. And I like to eyeball it because I think that's good practice too, because eventually your eyeballing gets better. So why did I do this? What is this telling me? Okay, this is telling me the height of the bottle relative to the neck. So this is neck, this is where the neck starts to curve out, this is where the bottle, that's the bottle height. So the next thing I need is the width, right? What is the width of this bottle relative to this neck? Well, we had said that when you take this neck measurement and you turn it this way, it's real close to the same size as the bottle. The bottle may be a little bit skinnier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this. Okay, I'm going to try my eyeball, which has not been very good today, but I'm just going to see if this is right, if this is in the center. Not quite. I'm going to move it a little closer. That's closer. Now I'm just going to recheck it. This height should be the same as that. Yeah, that's good. All right, so this is how wide my bottle should be. And guess what? Because I'm using this vine charcoal, if I was a little bit off, I'll just fix it. All right, so here's something that people do with sighting and measuring, with especially when you're drawing a completely symmetrical object like this bottle. You can draw yourself a box. Okay, and just try to, this line is probably not parallel. Pay attention to the edges of your paper. This line should be parallel to the edge of your paper or it'll throw you off. All right, so I've got this. All right, now, oops, now I know that my bottle, by the way, this is also another area of confusion. Know that these lines represent the edges of the bottle. I don't want to come back and draw the bottle inside of here. That's not going to be the right proportion. This is the edges of the bottle, okay? And then this is that part of the neck, okay? So I can kind of eyeball. The next thing I need to know, but before I draw that neck and work on getting these nice curves correct and even, is how wide to draw the bottle. I don't know if, when you guys draw the bottle without measuring, you may end up with a bottleneck that is too wide relative to the bottle you're looking at. Or you may end up with one that is too skinny relative to the bottle that you're looking at, right? I've seen all of that on the first day of class. So measure it. So again, take your stick, and this time I'm going to measure from here to here. All right? So I'm going to measure that, and then I'm going to see how many times that measurement goes across the bottle, because that's going lengthwise would just be too much. So it's about 2 and, let's go try that again. Try it on a different part of the label. Sometimes I try to line it up with things on the label. It's less than 3. It's like 2.75 or 2.5. All right, so let me see what that would come out to on this drawing. Sorry, wrong thing. This. 1, 2, 3. Close. closer to 3 on that drawing. All right, so what does that tell me then? I know that the width of the bottle would fit into this length. We'll go with 2.75. All right, so it'll be about that long. Sorry, 3 of them would be about that long. So what I want to do is just try to understand how to center the bottle width. And I think if 3 of them fit in, it's going to be probably about this. 1, 2, 3. Nope, a little bit wider. 1, 2, 3, something like that. All right. So I'm going to try to get that measurement, and right now I'm just going to eyeball it, because when measurements get a little too complicated, I always just say, well, I'm going to eyeball it first, and if that doesn't work, then I'm going to come back and change it. But this looks around the right length to me. Now I know that this curve in the bottle here starts down a little bit. It starts here and it curves up to meet the edge of the bottleneck. So, and I know that this is the straight part of the bottle, and I know down here that the bottle is curved, right? So how do I do that? Well, I'm just going to go from this midpoint and curve up on both sides slightly. So there's that curve. Then the bottle comes up to right about here, and I can measure this if I want. But for right now, I'm just going to curve it and curve it this way. All right, so what's wrong with my bottle here? What happened? I'll tell you what happened. This space, and this, I see this all the time with students, this space is not the same as this space, right? Somehow my center line that I was working with was off. So I measured it up here and it seemed correct, but somehow by the time it got down here, it's off. You can see that this is larger than this. So what happens is this part of the bottle is much wider than the other part. So I'm not sure how that happened, but I'm gonna just go ahead and try to fix that a little bit. Or you could redraw the center line, whichever way you want to do. But then you end up, now the hardest thing here is going to be this, getting this curve the same on both sides, because this is a symmetrical object. You want it to look symmetrical. And is it looking right? I think it's looking close. Alright, so one thing that you can do to help with this is if you drew a line here and you had the edge of your box here, you can look at this negative shape. And if I look at this negative shape, I can see that there's this is kind of a nice triangle here, and this is the one that looks a little better. So maybe what I need to do is instead of trying to draw this shape, maybe I should just try and draw that triangle like I see it here. Alright, so this gets me roughly the bottle in a little bit more accurate. I'm drawing in the label there. A little bit more accurate, and I'm going to expand that a little bit. All right, so there it is. Sighting and measuring is not an exact science, but it is a way to really help you try to help your mind to, when you're stuck, like for example with these edges here, and I'm stuck. I don't know quite how to get them the same on both sides. I can draw a center line, I can draw another line, I can look at that shape. Okay, I know that my proportions are right. Also, if I decided to draw this bottle very small, I could do that really quickly. I could say, okay, well, I want my bottle to be this big, so then I would divide it in half. I always check that now because I don't trust my eye. It's really about here. I'm going to divide it into fourths again. And then I know my bottleneck, I'm just going to take this measurement. Actually, it was this fourths. Take that measurement. Well, you know, and this is another reason why not to draw small with one of these large vine charcoals. It's challenging. All right, so this is just your basic idea about proportion, how to use measurements of proportion to get things right. This is kind of sloppy here because I don't want to bore you to death on the video. So what I want you to do at home is to get a bottle. It can be a wine bottle, it can be any kind of bottle, an olive oil bottle, a soda bottle, and I want you to on one side of your paper, I want you to draw it just freehand, and then on the other side of your paper, I want you to use sighting and measuring. When you draw it freehand, I want you to try to notice what the problems might be in terms of proportion. So start thinking about proportion. And on this side here, then you want to go ahead and draw with using sighting and measuring and using proportion to help you draw something. And you know, it's perfectly fair since you're at home and you might be looking for your own bottle. Get out a measuring tape. Look for a bottle that's got some proportions that might be not too confusing. It's easy enough. All right, so that's your bottle drawing that is due. After the bottle drawing, I want you to draw a teacup or a coffee cup with a box. This is the setup that I have. I just have this box that came from Amazon with something random in it. It can be any shape or size. In school, we use oval hat boxes. Now, those are fun because you get to practice your ellipses. But in this one, I have just, and it's sitting in front of me, you can't see it, but I can look at it and measure it. I probably should have done that before the video, but what I'm going to do is take my sighting and measuring stick, and I'm going to try to find some measurements that will help me draw an initial box. So if you look at my cursor over here, I don't know if you can see that or not, but on my cup, I'm going to measure across. I'm going to try measuring several different things. I'm going to measure across this ellipse in the cup. I might measure across this plate. I'm going to try to measure several of these horizontal measurements, and I'm going to see if I can figure out if one of those measurements fits nicely into the length so that I can get a proportion going. So, pardon. I'm going to turn it this way, actually. I'm going to go ahead and turn my paper this way because this drawing is actually taller than it is wide. If your drawing is wider than it is tall, you will probably use the landscape. All right, so I'm going to try to keep the same position also when I'm measuring. I'm going to make sure my elbow is locked. It's got to be out and locked in front of you for consistency. Now I'm measuring across the top of the ellipse. Then I'm going to move that ellipse and see if there is a helpful measurement with using that ellipse. Okay, I found something. So across the top of the ellipse, measurement is almost the same as the height as the cup. And then if I move it down again, okay, that's kind of helpful. All right, so what I did, I'll show you with this cup, is that I measured the width from here to here. And then I took that measurement, and this is in my view, it might be different holding the cup, and I turned it this way. Well, let me see if you can see it here. I turned it this way so that I can measure from here, see if the width from here to here, how does that stack up to this measurement? And they're about the same. It's maybe a little bit shorter this way. And then I took that measurement, and then I went down and to see how I could reach the bottom of the box. And so I've got that measurement. So that measurement, and from the back of the ellipse to the bottom of the cup, and then I move it down, and that is one, so that's 1, 2, 3, just about 3.5. Okay, so 3.5 of those. And so what happens when your measurement isn't perfect? Well, a lot of times it's not. So I might round that up, but you have to correct it or your proportions will be off. So let's say that one of these, this ellipse of the cup, when I measured it this way and I turned it this way, that was the same as the height of the bottom of the cup. So that's where the bottom of the cup came. And so I notice it kind of has these edges that come in like that, and then it narrows down like that. And I'm not too concerned about the handle at this point, but I'll just put one there for giggles. All right, so when I measured this way, then I measured this way, then I brought it down here. So this is my first, this is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I think I said it was 3.5, didn't I? So about like that to the bottom of the box. All right. So that's what I'm talking about as far as sighting and measuring. This was just an example. I want to first, before I start drawing the cup and everything, I want to start off with that box that shows me width to height. So I've only just done the height here, and I got one of these to about 3.5 for the whole height. Right? 1, 2, 3.5. I'm just going to double check it before I get it wrong. 1, 2, 3.5. Okay. And then I want to know, and when I'm talking about width, when I have multiple objects, you know, when I say the width, what do I mean? Overall, I mean the width of the drawing. Okay, so I mean the width from this edge here of the box, the outermost thing, and I think that these kind of line up a little bit. In my view, actually it doesn't. In my view, the saucer comes over the edge. So this is from the width, I'll have to get from this point over to that point, because the saucer is much wider than the box. All right, so I'm going to take my measurement that I've used as my basic measurement, and I'm going to see how many times that fits across. It's a little bit less than 2, so it's like a 1 to 2. So I'm going to start over now that I have that, because this is over on the side. So now I have my proportions for width, and this is height. All right. So I'm going to decide that I want the top of my saucer to come here, and the bottom of that box to come here. Try to get a better center line this time. Alright, so this should be the bottom of the box. This should be, and I've left myself a little bit of room because, like I said, once your eye gets to be good, the eye is more important than anything else. And so I said it's 1, 2, 3.5. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to make this a little bit longer. I'm going to divide this into fourths, and then I can adjust it to 3.5, because to me, that's just a lot less headache. It makes more, dividing something into fourths is so easy. You just divide it in half, and then you divide it in half again. Alright, so let's see. Is this halfway? 1? Yeah, it is. Alright, so this is a 1 to 2 proportion. Now let's turn it into a 1 to 4. So all I've got to do is divide one of these halves into half. And let me measure that and see if I got it right. Yeah, so then since I've done that, I can just repeat it, and that should work. Alright, so here are my fourths. I've got 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. But what we said is it's really more like 1 to 3.5. So instead of it ending here at 1 to 4, it's going to end a little bit earlier, right about here. So this can become the edge of my box here. So that's height. Now we want to talk about width. Width of this drawing is about 1 to 2, using my ellipse measurement as the 1. So I forgot if it was a little bit longer. I'm going to measure from here to here, and then I'm going to measure the length of the saucer. 1 from the outermost edge of the saucer. It's a little bit less. So what I'm going to do again, like I did here, I'm going to make it 1 to 2, and then I'm going to adjust a little bit on the edges, or just draw the saucer in a little bit from that. So this is 1. Alright, so this is what it would look like. And I'm trying to keep things parallel. It can be a challenge. Parallel lines should be a lot easier, but I tend to, especially at this angle, I tend to not be too exact. Alright, so now I know that my teacup is going to fit into up here, and then my saucer comes down, and then I have the rest. And why do I remember that my teacup fits in here? And I'm going to bring it in a little bit. So this is the edge. I'm going to bring it in a little bit because it wasn't quite 1 to 2. It was 1 to 3.5. So I'm just going to bring it in a little. Alright. Alright, so my teacup. I know that the end of my ellipse is right here. I'm looking actually at mine. That ellipse is a lot more open because I'm above it. My eye level is above this cup and saucer, as you can see there in the picture. And so it's open quite a bit. Maybe like that. But this is my measurement, so this ellipse, hey, I'm pretty good. So remember, this opening here is the same width. It's the whole measurement we built the whole drawing on. So look, that's pretty good. So those are my points for my ellipse, my 4 points. So I'm going to ghost it. It looks about right on as far as the opening goes. Could maybe be a little bit wider, because I am looking down on it. And then I know that it ends right about here. I know I can see that the cup angles in. So how do you know that? Here, I'll just get it for the top camera. If you hold your stick parallel to this cup, you can see that there is an angle that comes in. So you can do that by closing one eye, holding the stick perpendicular to the ground, and so that would be the equivalent, the visual equivalent of putting a line here. And I know that this cup comes in this way. All right, so I'm going to make it come in this way. Get rid of my lines. And remember, we're not real concerned with right now with doing details. Details always come last. You'll hear me say over and over again, we're gonna, when you draw, you're going from general to specific. Right now we're in the general phase. We're thinking about basic shapes and proportions. And then we're gonna, now that I know that the ellipse of the cup, of the saucer, hits these edges, right? Because it was what I measured to get the outermost edges. So the question is, how wide of an ellipse is it? Well, I'm seeing a lot of that saucer. That box is also really foreshortened, so in this view, which means it's going to be shorter than it looks. So I'm going to try to take a measurement, and one thing that I can do is I can see on my cup the saucer disappears right about here on the cup, and right about there on the handle. And then I can see here that this is the center of the saucer, but that front of the saucer doesn't come out too far. It's really only right about here. So if this is the back of my ellipse, and this is the front, then, and these are my edges, I can draw ellipses are tricky. Yet another reason why I love Vine charcoal, because I love being able to do this until I get something right. Also, one thing you might want to do is draw yourself a perpendicular line this way so that you can make sure the ellipse is not crooked. You know, you want to make sure that it's kind of, right now it feels crooked to me. So I'm going to try it one more time. It comes up too far here. Okay, that's a little bit better. Alright, so I have my ellipse of my cup, my saucer. The saucer, I can kind of see that it comes down. I can see a little bit underneath it, like this. Using this kneaded eraser, so it's a little less confusing. Then the bottom of this saucer is here, and then the box is, if I want to figure out the angle of that box, I want to see where that first edge, where does that come up to? So I'm going to hold my stick along that edge that points at me on the box, and I'm going to see where does that line up on the cup. It is kind of in the center. Maybe a little bit to the left of center, maybe, yeah, a little bit this way, right here. So this is going to be the edge of that box, and I know that the box is my outermost point down here. So now I'm going to do what we did when we talked about cubes. I'm going to, well, first of all, I'm going to note that this is the bottom of the of that saucer. I can see underneath the saucer that the surface of the box, and it comes out something like this. I haven't measured that, but it comes out like that. So I'm going to do that. You can eyeball things if you think it's right, and it lines up with this. Now I can take my stick and get that exact measurement by holding the stick again like this, holding it perpendicular to the ground. If I want to get this bottom edge, the angle, I'm going to turn it clockwise until I line up with the angle. Then I'm going to try to move it to my finger. That looks exactly right. Now I'm going to do it rotating to get this back angle, because those are the ones that can be tricky. And I'm going to try to just keep it like the face of a clock. So it's kind of more or less out this way. And the box comes in right here. All right, so what I would do then, if I were drawing this in great detail, I would look at it, I would stop at this point, I would put it across the room and look at it and see if it looked right to me. I think it's a little bit, maybe a little bit, no, it's not much thicker than that actually. And then I would make corrections. So I put it across the room and say, that angle's not quite right, this angle isn't quite right. I think it actually goes back a little bit further so that these two appear to converge. Is that one, that looks a little better. I'll get rid of this so I'm not confused. All right, so what I would do at this point, this is what I call the bones of a drawing. This is me just trying to get the measurements and perspective right. I'm not worried about detail. I'm not thinking about, you know, the lip of this or anything else other than trying to get this right. The ellipse might be a little crooked. It might look like it's sitting on there a little cattywampus, a little bit that way or that way. So what I would do probably after I went across the room is I would try to correct that ellipse again. And it does need to be corrected. So I told you ellipses, they're the hard thing. Alright, so let's see if that looks better. And what I want to try to instill in you in this beginning part of the class is be willing to make corrections. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to eyeball and say, that's not quite right. That's how you get better at, you know, eyeballing things. That looks a little bit more flat, but it might still be a little tilted, but I'm not going to get up and do that just now. But you have the idea. So the next thing I want you to do after you do your wine bottle drawing is I want you to find a teacup or a coffee cup, some kind of cup, and if you have like a little plate you can put under it or a saucer, do that so you can practice your ellipses, and then find some kind of box and put them on top of the box. Please don't break Mom's china. I don't want her to be mad at me. But try something on your own at home. And what I'm going to have you do for critique is, since everybody's going to probably be drawing something different, what I'd like you to do is to take a picture, if possible, of the objects, your little still life setup that you're drawing. Try to take it from your point of view. Sit in the chair that you're drawing with and try to take a picture that's the same angle that you're looking at. And it's not for you to look at when you're drawing. I want you to look at the object. I want you to draw from life. But it would be helpful for us in critique if you could upload a picture of what you were drawing so that we could compare it to your final proportions and say, well, this looks a little off, that looks a little off. This I'm not completely happy with yet, but I don't want to bore you to death. So you get the idea of what needs to happen for sighting and measuring. So again, just to recap, with the sighting and measuring, with this stick, what we did is I eyeballed, I'm just going to review it on my drawing. I eyeballed this to begin with, and I measured it using my stick, not on the object itself, but through my eyesight. I measured this length. Then I decided that if I held it like that, it was about the size of the cup itself. And if I brought it down again and again, that it would be about 3.5. And I think that I ended up drawing this a little bit larger than it is, so that didn't quite pan out measurement-wise. Or I could just bring this down to adjust it. So, see, this is what sighting and measuring gets you to do, is to just start thinking about proportions. It helps you to eyeball and say, well, maybe that needs to be a little bit longer. Okay, so I measured this distance, I compared it to this distance, then I took this distance again, and I compared it to the distance across here, because this is the widest point of the drawing. So by putting these lines, I knew where the widest point of the drawing ended. By putting these bottom lines, I knew where the highest point of the drawing ended up here, and where the lowest point of the drawing, which is this point right here, I knew where that ended. And that's where the box comes from. Okay? So if this can be very confusing, this is the first time I've taught it virtually. I hope it makes sense to you. If not, try it. You can try Googling some more videos, but this is as simple as I can make it. I could say that if we were drawing a rectangle, let's just say there's a flat rectangle that we're drawing, and if we measured this distance here, and we decided that the height was twice as much as that, then we could just draw that, right, by repeating this twice. That's repeating it once. This is repeating it twice. And that's a 1-to-2 ratio, right? And all that means is one of these fits in twice on these. Okay, 1-to-2. So one width, or you could say it's half as wide as it is tall. One width, 2. Okay, so that's it. It's pretty simple, and it's just helping you size things so that your drawings look more accurate. Proportion is the most difficult thing to get. And it also relaxes you. I mean, the first part is not relaxing when you're trying to get the measurements, but you know, when I had this box here and I was like, oh, the teacup fits in that box, then I was just ready to go ahead and draw it, and I felt confident that I would get it right, or I'd get it close to being right, and then I could correct it later. All right, so that's it for today. I hope this has been good and helpful. So remember to draw your wine bottle and draw your cup saucer box. All right, we'll see you soon.